Was there a deal or no deal to boost the exit of Republican Party Chair Jim Greer? Former House Speaker Ray Sansom ethics hearing set to begin, and CFO Alex Sink says cut middle managers, save taxpayers millions. All of that on PowerPlay this week with our guests, Mike Vasalinda of Capital News Service and Steve Bosquet of the St. Petersburg Times. Okay, Republican Party of Florida remains in the news, but not the way they'd like to be, as the investigations and calls for them continue about what kind of deal or no deal did Jim Greer get.
Well, who knows what kind of deal he got, because they're going back and forth. I think what's important to look at is, what does John Thrasher do? Does he release those credit cards? Does he tell us who spent what? And I'd be surprised if the IRS hasn't already been here, and if they haven't been, they're going to be here soon enough, and that's the problem the party's got.
This is not the kind of publicity the Republican Party wants statewide, is it?
No, it isn't, and not at all. Prediction: they won't release the credit card bills. How's that for going out on a limb?
I think you're right.
What they will do, though, what Thrasher will do, or whoever the chair is, will authorize a forensic top-to-bottom audit of party finances. But one of the reasons they don't want the credit card bills to come out is a fear that they'd be exploited on the blogs and in newspapers for sensational news purposes, with no real context to how the money was spent.
Wouldn't they be well advised to bring in a white knight, a Melanie Hines type, if not Melanie Hines herself, to say, I give this my good housekeeping seal of approval, everything's in order now?
Well, I'm not sure who they bring in from the Republican Party. Obviously, Richard Coates has been doing a lot of work with them, but I think the question is they need to bring somebody in, and I'm not sure John Thrasher is the guy to be that white knight particularly.
Well, staying on this Republican political scandal, we've got the former House Speaker Ray Sansom set to go under ethics hearings in the House where he still serves. How bad's all that going to be, or is it going to get cleaned up before they begin?
It doesn't look like they've cut a deal. It looks like they're going to go forward with the hearing. It's going to be messy. It's unpalatable. Speaker Larry Creedle said this week, this thing has dragged on long enough. Well, it's going to drag on one more week at least. And I see Sansom coming out of this with some fairly mild, but he's going to get punished. He's going to get admonished or censured or something by this committee.
But the conservative darling Marco Rubio could come into the shadows of this, couldn't he?
Well, he could come up and say, I promise to tell the truth, and the question is who exploits that photograph, and that's why there was such pressure by others in the party as well, not to make anyone come and testify and trying to get a deal cut. Apparently they worked more on trying to limit what can be entered as evidence, and that may determine who gets called.
This is fairly rare, even in modern Florida history, where we've had some scandals, to have a public spanking, essentially, of a leader.
It really is. I mean, there have been a few others in recent years, but they've always seemed to, like former Representative Ralph Arza, settled before it went to a hearing, because no one wants this public spectacle with people like Rubio and former Senator Lisa Carlton raising their right hand and testifying.
Yeah. A fairly spectacular fall from grace for a guy who's still serving the people, though.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he, 2 years ago, he was on top of the world, one of the most powerful men in Florida, and look now, he's on trial, and he's had nothing to show for the last 2 years.
Well, CFO Alex Sink has proposed to save taxpayers perhaps as much as $10 million a year. We should get rid of many of the middle managers in state government. And that idea playing pretty well or not?
Well, it's underwhelming, Ron. It's an idea that says to me that, again, Sink is trying to calibrate a message. She announced this as CFO, not as a candidate for governor, but it's not that dramatic a thing. A lot of agencies are leaving unfilled positions vacant anyway because there's no money.
But $10 million in potential savings, does that play pretty well with people in a tough economy?
Well, I think actually the savings were quite a bit more than that by the time you eliminated all of those people. And I'll tell you who it's playing well with is the union. With ASME, they are thrilled with it because they say, we don't need the supervision and we'd like the money going into our pockets.
Well, it does show that she's trying to get the campaign on track going forward, and it's a much better policy statement than some of the prior ones.
It is. Remember, she took some ribbing for her paper clip idea, which she thought was unfair criticism. But as we reported recently, my colleague Adam Smith, Sink's message is not smooth enough, it's not crisp enough yet against McCollum in this race for governor.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to go to your respective power plays of the week. Stephen.
Power play for me goes to Sharon Day. Sharon Day is the underdog candidate for chair of the Republican Party of Florida, and whether she wins or loses, I think she's awakened the grassroots in the party and has forced the leadership to take these folks more seriously, and if they've got any brains at all, if Day loses the race for chairman, she'll get some consolation prize in the party hierarchy.
Okay, Michael?
I'm going to go with Kendrick Meek, and the reason is he's making his 5th trip to Pensacola this week. Kind of unusual for a Democrat going to a Republican stronghold. Says he's not ceding that part of the state. Whether it plays out in the end or not, who knows, but it's quite a bold step for a black Democrat.
And my power play of the week is former statewide prosecutor Melanie Hines. Whether it's the Florida Democratic Party, as a few years ago, or the State House of Representatives, she's brought in as a white knight to give the good housekeeping seal of approval to right the ship. Mike Vaselinda, Steve Bosquet, thank you very much. Go to the Safety Review for the latest political news, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.